The wind howled through the lonely valley as black clouds gathered over the hills. The smell of rain mixed with dust drifted across the small wooden farmhouse that stood at the edge of Miller Creek. Inside, the widow Clara Jennings stirred a pot of stew over the fire. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. 3 years had passed since her husband was buried behind the chapel. 3 long, silent years of running the ranch alone. The only sounds that kept her company now were the creak of the shutters and the whisper of her late husband's ghost in her mind. "You're stronger than you think, Clara." But tonight the wind carried something else. Hoofbeats. Slow, heavy, coming closer. She turned toward the door, her hand tightening around the wooden spoon. Through the flicker of lightning, a tall shadow appeared outside. A man, broad-shouldered, with a long duster coat and a hat pulled low over his eyes. His horse exhaled white mist in the cold air. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate raps. Clara's throat went dry. "Who's there?" The voice that answered was low, rough, and far too calm. "Name's Colt Harland. My horse threw a shoe 2 miles back. Just need a place to wait out the storm." She hesitated, heart pounding. Everyone in these parts knew the name Colt Harland. A wanted man, some said. A gunslinger turned drifter, dangerous, unpredictable. But the rain came down in sheets now, lashing the windows like fists. She looked out and saw his horse trembling in the cold. Against her better judgment, she unlatched the door just an inch. Lightning flashed, and in that split second she saw his face. Scarred, weathered, eyes like storm clouds themselves, dangerous. Yes, but hollowed by something deeper, regret. "Please," he said softly, water dripping from the brim of his hat. "I don't mean no trouble. Just need a roof for the night." Clara swallowed hard. "Please don't come inside," she whispered, her voice trembling between fear and something she didn't want to name. I can't have trouble here." Colt's jaw flexed. "Trouble ain't what I'm looking for, ma'am. Just warmth." Her heart warred with her reason, but her conscience, her loneliness, won. She opened the door. The storm outside raged like the world was ending, but inside the room felt tighter than ever. Colt stood by the fire, steam rising from his soaked coat. His shoulders were massive, his presence filling the small cabin like thunder. Clara tried to ignore him as she ladled stew into a bowl. Her eyes betrayed her, flicking toward him again and again, the glint of water on his arms, the way his chest moved with slow, measured breaths. He caught her looking. Didn't say a word, just half smiled, the kind of smile that told stories. Of a man who'd known too much pain to believe in comfort. "I appreciate this," he said finally, taking the bowl from her. His fingers brushed hers, rough skin meeting soft. It sent a jolt up her arm she hadn't felt in years. "Been ridin'." "For days. Ain't met kindness in a long while." Clara pulled her hand back fast. "Kindness ain't the same as trust, Mr. Harland." He nodded once, eyes on the fire. "You'd be smart not to trust me." Her voice lowered. "Then why should I have let you in?" He looked up, and something raw flickered behind his eyes. "Maybe you needed to." The wind moaned against the window. Neither spoke for a long moment. Later, as the fire burned low, Colt sat with his revolver disassembled on the table, cleaning it in silence. Clara worked near the sink, trying not to notice his every movement. But her heart betrayed her, stealing glances she shouldn't have dared. "You're running from something," she said quietly. He didn't look up. "Ain't everyone?" She pressed. "They say you killed a man in Silver Creek." He looked up then, eyes hard but not cruel. "They say right." Her breath caught. "You admit it?" "Man I killed was worse than me," he said simply. "But that don't change what I am." He reassembled the gun slowly, piece by piece. Then his voice softened. "You ever done something right, but still can't sleep for it?" Clara froze. Her mind went back to the night her husband lied, how she'd lied to the sheriff. About what really happened. About the debt, the argument, the accident that wasn't so accidental. "Yes," she whispered, "every night." Their eyes met across the fire. 2 broken souls, both too proud to admit how much they understood each other. Hours passed. The storm softened to a drizzle. Clara moved to close the curtains, but her hand trembled. When she turned, Colt was standing, closer now than before. "You should sleep," she murmured. "I don't sleep much," he replied. The silence between them pulsed, slow, heavy, alive. He took a step closer. She didn't move. Another step. The firelight caught the side of his face, strong, tired, haunted. "Clara," he said softly, her name tasting strange on his tongue. "You don't have to be afraid of me." She swallowed. "It's not you I'm afraid of." "Then what?" Her voice broke, almost a whisper. "What you make me feel." He stopped just inches away. His hand hovered near hers, but didn't touch. The restraint burned more than contact could. Lightning flashed through the window, and for a heartbeat, everything froze, his breath, her pulse, the quiet desperation hanging between them. "Please don't come inside," she said again. But this time, she wasn't talking about the house. She was talking about her heart. Colt's eyes softened. "You already let me in, Clara. Storm's just making you see it." A sudden pounding at the door shattered the moment. "Sheriff's office, open up!" Clara's blood ran cold. Colt's expression hardened instantly. He snatched up his revolver, checking the chamber. "They followed me," he muttered. "Didn't think they'd come this far." "Colt," she whispered, panicked. "You can't fight them here." He looked toward the back door. "Ain't got much choice." She grabbed his arm. "You'll die if you run." He looked at her hand, then at her face. "Ain't the first time someone told me that." Outside, the sheriff's voice barked again. "We know you're in there, Harland." "Step out now." Colt turned to her one last time. "You shouldn't have let me in." She shook her head fiercely. "Maybe I should have done it sooner." For a heartbeat, he almost smiled. Then he slipped out the back door into the darkness. The sheriff burst in moments later, boots muddy and guns drawn. "Where is he, Widow Jennings?" Clara's breath came shallow. Her heart screamed to tell the truth, but her soul whispered otherwise. "He left hours ago," she said calmly. "Before the storm." The sheriff narrowed his eyes. "You sure about that?" She met his gaze without flinching. "You think I'd hide a killer in my home?" After a tense pause, the sheriff nodded. "If he comes back, you send word." When they left, Clara shut the door and leaned against it, trembling. The house was silent again, except for the rain tapping on the window. Then footsteps. Behind her. Colt stood there, wet, breathless, eyes dark as night. "You lied for me," he said softly. "Go," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "Before I regret it." He stepped closer, voice low. "You don't regret it?" "Not one bit." Her lips trembled. "You'll only bring trouble." He reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek. "Maybe, but I'd rather bring trouble to your door than spend another night wishing." I hadn't walked away. Dawn broke slow and golden, spilling light across the valley. The storm was gone, but the world still smelled of rain and firewood. Clara stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching Colt saddle his horse. The world felt both too quiet and too loud at once. "You could stay," she said, barely audible. "Fix the fence line, maybe. Help with the herd." He smiled faintly. "You'd want a man like me hanging around?" "I didn't say I wanted you," she whispered. "I said you could." He climbed onto his horse, eyes on her. "You're a dangerous woman, Clara Jennings. And you're a foolish man, Colt Harland." He tipped his hat, that quiet half-smile tugging at his lips again. "Maybe that's why we fit." She took a step forward, unable to help herself. "If you go now, you don't come back." He hesitated. "You'd really want that?" Her voice cracked. "No, but it's the only way I'll survive you." For a long moment, he just looked at her, like he was memorizing her face. Then he turned his horse toward the hills. But before he vanished into the horizon, he called back over his shoulder, "Storms don't last forever, Clara. I'll come when the next one hits." And then he was gone. Weeks passed. Then months. The snows came early that year. Clara went about her days, feeding the chickens, mending fences, baking bread she never ate. But every time thunder rolled in the distance, her heart betrayed her. She'd look to the hills and whisper to the wind, "Please, don't come inside." But deep down she knew he would. And one grey afternoon, When the sky split open again with rain and the wind cried through the valley, she saw a silhouette at the edge of her land. A horse, a man, the storm's shadow reborn. Her hands trembled on the door latch. Her heart pounded in rhythm with the thunder. When the knock came, she didn't ask who it was. She just whispered to herself, "Clara Jennings, you fool." And she opened the door. Colt stood there, dripping wet, the same storm in his eyes. "Told you I'd come back." She should have shut the door, should have told him to leave. But instead, she just stood there, tears mixing with the rain. "You'll ruin me," she said softly. He stepped inside, voice low. "Already did." And then, in the quietest, simplest moment of her life, he reached for her hand. No words, no promises. Just the steady touch of two people who'd both stopped running. The storm outside roared, but inside the cabin, the firelight flickered warm and alive. The same fire that had started months ago, dangerous, forbidden and unyielding, had finally found its home. Sometimes love don't ask for permission. It don't care about danger or sin or second chances. It just shows up in the middle of a storm, looking like the one person you swore you'd never let in. And if you're lucky, it stays.